On Saturday, January 3rd, President Donald Trump ordered U.S. special forces into Venezuela, where they captured President Nicolas Maduro and his wife. And just like that, Maduro was removed from power. In Israel, officials acclaimed the move, given Venezuela's deep ties to Iran and Hezbollah. Is this really a significant blow to Iran's regional influence? Could Iran's Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei be the target of a similar intervention? And are the street demonstrations seriously threatening the regime? And finally, Prime Minister Netanyahu met with President Trump in Mar-a-Lago. One subject that was on the table might have not been caught by your radars. Hello everyone, this is Brief.IL by INSS, a new weekly dive into the events shaping Israel's national security. Every week, we will release an episode that breaks down the ongoing developments that matter most to Israel's national security. My name is Emmanuelle Elbaz-Phelps. I am a journalist and the host of this program. And here with me in the studio is Reserve Major General Tamir Hayman, the Chief of IDF Military Intelligence until 2021, who today is the Executive Director of the INSS, the Institute for National Security Studies. This is Brief.IL. Let's begin. Hello, Tamir.
Hi, Emmanuelle.
So this move by President Trump to send the U.S. Special Forces to capture the president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife, to bring them to court in New York. There's a lot to talk about. We'll focus on the aspect that have to do with Israel and the national security of Israel. And first, we have to say that the officials here acclaimed the move in Israel. The foreign minister, but also Prime Minister Netanyahu, because they wanted to remind that Venezuela is the part of the Iranian axis of resistance, so-called. So maybe we should start by that. You tell us what role was playing or is playing Venezuela of Maduro with this axis, the ties to Iran and Hezbollah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not sure that it's a part of the Shiite axis, but it's most definitely the forward base of the IRGC. Forward base, that means they conducted their operation in America, both Southern and Northern America, from Venezuela. For example, if they want to orchestrate some form of a terror attack against the representative of Israel in Argentina, for example, or in Brazil.
Or in Mexico, that happened.
Or in Mexico, like it happened. They allegedly tried to do that. The forward base is Venezuela. They're preparing themselves to collect intelligence in order to assist the operation, etc., etc. Secondly, it is long been the hub of economic activity by Hezbollah and Iran. Hezbollah used Venezuela as a hub for drug trafficking, and the money was transferred back to Hezbollah as an additional part of the budget. And Iran used Venezuela in order to bypass sanctions regarding crude oil shipments. They send heavy oil, refine it in Venezuela, and then export it along the export of oil to China and Russia. And in total aspect, we have cut Iran from not the most important part of the boycott circumvention, but certainly a prominent part of that effort.
So this is truly a blow to Iran and Hezbollah?
It is a blow to Hezbollah. The drug trafficking of Hezbollah was exposed 5 years ago, so it's diminished a little bit, but they have still maintained presence in Venezuela.
Venezuela also gave visa to Hezbollah members so they could move around the continent.
That's forward base operation. Okay. That's what they are doing. It's not just a narco state, it's a terror state, and it hosts Hezbollah as a part of the Shiite axis and provide them for any assistance in order to be able to perform in all of the Americas, okay? So that's one. So as for the economic blow to Iran, Iran exports roughly about 1.9 million barrels per day, okay? About 100,000 of them was through Venezuela. So it's not that it is a deadly strike, but
every blow matters.
Yeah.
Okay, but the removal of Maduro Is this the guarantee that this is the end of the operations between Venezuela and Iran and Hezbollah?
That's a great question that regards a form or a pattern that we keep seeing in the grand initiatives conducted by Trump administration, where you have fantastic initiative and achievements that beyond our capacity to anticipate, and soon after you don't see the following steps being prepared in advance. It seems like it is the details that missing or lacking from the Trump administration strategic planning. And for that, in that case, it's the perfect example. What will replace Maduro? Who will replace Maduro? According to the recent publication, it was supposed to be the deputy of Maduro, Rodriguez. She was planned to cooperate with Trump in order to invite those oil and companies to drill or whatever, to what Trump describes in his speech. But it seems like it is not drilled, it's not planned to the detail, because the Minister of Interior and the Ministry of Defense of Venezuela are rejecting that kind of cooperation, and due to the fact that there's no presence of U.S. soldiers on the soil. The special operation was conducted and evaporated. It's gone. So what the day after looks like, whether the next administration in Venezuela will cooperate or we will return back to some new form of dictatorship that will renew connections with Iran in the long term. We don't know. It's still the day after was not planned fully, I think.
And also you say renew, but Maduro is out, but his administration, the institutions, they are still in place, and he was not the one conducting day-to-day by himself the operation. Yeah. So we can assume that people are still working today.
Let's take the positive side of it. It's smart. If you are learning something from the past experience of United States in Iraq, destroying the administration, once you ruin it, you are owning it, and you need to reestablish it, and it takes years and money in order to regain some form of control. If the plan was to use the administration of Venezuela and just remove or replace and install, instead of Maduro, some form of, let's call it, I'm not going to insult, but some form of a leader that cooperates with Trump, that's smart to do, as long as it was planned and agreed before the operation. Just gambling on it and hoping for the good because of the success of the operation is a 50-50 chance, and that's not enough in strategy.
The second thing that has been said in Israeli media and in the public discourse since this operation is, okay, let's do the same with Iran. There is this fantasy going on, and I'm going to ask you if it's a fantasy, that maybe if Donald Trump decided that he can remove Maduro, he can just remove Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran. Is this a possibility?
Well, let's make the huge difference needed in the newly published or national security strategy of United States. There's a clear definition, the clear separation between the Western Hemisphere and the Americas and the rest of the world. This is the new Monroe Doctrine. Some refer it as the Donroe Doctrine. Venezuela, Southern America, Greenland, North America, Canada, that's the backyard of the United States, and it will not tolerate any form of potential threats by adversaries of the United States, and Iran is one of those adversaries. So that's totally different from the Middle East. In the Middle East, it is not that assured that this doctrine will work over there. Secondly, it was not, I don't know how people imagined this military operation. It was very extended. And it took 3 or 4 months to plan ahead. And you can conduct such kind of a very complicated military operation where you dominate the space, the maritime, everything surrounding Venezuela. That's not the case in Iran.
It was not only just switch off the electricity, make it dark, go pick him up from his bed because the CIA informant was working with an informant, and that's it.
It was more complicated. Like an Entebbe operation or a James Bond operation. It was an operation that was fully suitable to Venezuela. You cannot duplicate that to Iran. Secondly, the administration. If the supreme leader of Iran disappears tomorrow, the IRGC will take over control and will immediately establish a military regime. Iran is built in a resilience that can absorb that kind of an operation, that kind of a strike. It's not fully dependent on one man that gives all the shots, okay? It's an administration. You have two armies, the IRGC and the military branch of the Iranian military, what we call the Iranian military, and they are totally disconnected. And you have the Basij, and you have the 83 scholars that are due to decide about the next leader. It's a much more complex system in Iran.
A day before the operation in Venezuela, Donald Trump, he wrote on the social media that if the regime in Iran will shoot people in the street demonstrating against it, then the U.S. will intervene. And then he decided to intervene in Venezuela. Since then, people were shot in Iran. He has not moved, but on the other hand, you can see Iran regime can see that, well, Donald Trump means business. So is this action in Venezuela had an influence on the Iranian regime or not really?
I think that's the point that is most important in the eyes of Israeli strategy. The deterrence effect of Trump now doubled than before Venezuela operation. The fact that when he says something, although imaginable, eventually conducted, and for weeks he said that we will act on the ground on Venezuela. Nobody believed him. Everybody counted the numbers of Marine corps to deduct from that it's not enough for a grand scale operation. Nobody thought that it will be that form of a special operation that pulled up a leader. And he said and conducted. Now he says lots of things right now. He gives threats all across the Middle East. What's true, what will be done, and what is just a hollow threat, nobody knows. And that's important to Israel, because in most cases, the Israel security interest is aligned with Trump. And when Trump gives a threat that is considered to be a credible threat that can promote Israeli interest and the cooperation between Israel and the United States to establish a new Middle Eastern order.
But it's also a threat that goes to Greenland and Cuba and Colombia. It's like Trump is like this superpower hero in his mind, at least, I think, the way he sees himself. Like there's no limit to his power right now. He can do whatever he wants, wherever he wants. Is this something that can backfire on Israel?
Trump is destroying the rules of the rule-based world. He destroys, he's a disruptor. He destroys order. So it's very hard to anticipate. It's very hard to influence. It's very hard to plan with that kind of a guy. The mechanism of decision-making in the White House is also destroyed. It's something very unique to the Trump special way of conducting things.
And it's not value-based also.
It's values according to his values, which are different from what you could expect from the President of the United States. But it's his values and he keeps on referring to them. But basically, the problem is that in that kind of a disruptive order, a small player has difficult to plan ahead and can be immediately be thrown underneath the bus if it doesn't really, a small player, it doesn't really conduct his moves very aligned or very adjusted to that kind of strategy performed by Trump. That's the negative side. The positive side is the deterrence effect. It's really, he threatened all over. He will not execute all of his threats, but some of them he will execute. Nobody knows who and what, and that is a very, very special, very, very unique deterrence Trump effect that can be helpful to Israel's strategy.
So it's helpful to Israel's strategy when Israel is on the side of the state, which is mainly the case. But when today we are talking, there should be a meeting about Syria between Syrians and Israelis. And if Trump puts his foot down and demands some things from Israel, Israel also knows that they have to, well, this is Trump. He threatens and he gets what he wants.
You are not fully independent and sovereign in your sovereignty over your strategy. You need to make sure that you are not crossing fire with the will of the president, and that restricts Israel freedom of navigation. Okay, if today in Paris, when we are recording that, they will decide on a security agreement, and in that case, Israel would have to withdraw from the buffer zone in Syria. I don't see Israelis standing on the back foot and arguing over that. And if a week from now, America is forcing Israel to open the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza Strip, although it's against the principle that we are not proceeding unless Ran Gvili, the last remaining dead hostages in Hamas, will return. I don't see a possibility of to go against the will of the president. It's true that the intimate discussion between Netanyahu and Trump are very effective, and it seems like Netanyahu knows how to extract the benefits from that special connection. And it's a give or take, and it's a very transactional kind of relationship. It's a give and take. So probably if we are forced to do something against our will, we probably got something from that, and some got something in other benefits, maybe in other areas that we are not exposed to. But that's the discussions that is made.
Okay, we'll go back to that and the meeting between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Before that, I just want to ask you about Iran. Regardless of what happened in Venezuela, the demonstrations are going on for more than a week now inside of Iran on a scale that is growing, but also not to an extent that we see a huge shift. But the regime is weak since the war in last June. So how do you assess the situation?
Well, it's very hard to anticipate the collapse of a regime from external position. Most intelligence agencies have failed anticipating the USSR collapse, the Soviet Union collapse, that is, and other regimes that fall. It's very, very hard. It's so hard that I will not give my predictions regarding the potential collapse of the current regime. What we can say that if you are counting just the numbers and the trend, that's not unique. Okay, previously there were demonstrations in that scale, and previously even the death rates of Iranians, civilians from the IRGC was doubled. Okay, so it's not unique in that context. It happened in 2022, it happened in 2019, in 2017. Almost every 2 years you get that kind of a phenomenon. But you cannot compare and deduct, because the situation in Iran right now is totally different. The economic situation is dire. They are suffering from drought. There is an energy crisis. The inflation is impossible to bear. The internal situation is dire. Secondly, they have exposed their weakness in the last war in front of Iran, in their capability to defend the civilians in Iran. Third, the concept that there is a network of Shiite proxies that defends Iran collapsed. Although the proxy themselves, the militia, did not collapse themselves, okay? The system collapsed, and the concept that it is, their mere presence and their mere military capability can defend Iran, that collapsed. Okay. The concept and the system. And third, there is this Israel who probably seems to be changed from the previous rounds of demonstration. Israel right now is more self-confident in their military capabilities. It probably after October 7 changed the concept of preemptive war, and now it's using it in much loosely than before. And Iranians know that. And Iranians are afraid of the fact that it will use that again in anticipation of the renewed reconstruction of their Iranian military capability. And last factor is Trump factor, which we have discussed extensively. So if you combine Trump effect, Israel is renewed, the Shiite axis stumbling around, Iran weaker, it's a kind of a perfect storm. And in that context, the perfect storm, we are facing a very, very unique situation. After saying that, I'm not sure, I don't know how it will end up. Maybe a week from now, they will somehow recover because they have this mechanism of the IRGC and the Basij, and they are prepared perfectly for that kind of scenario, not in the regional and global context.
Now, there are two possibilities. There are the ones that say because Iran is on the verge of collapsing, the regime is on the verge of collapsing, they will go, and give out everything they have and they will attack Israel right now. And there's this other school that says because they're on the verge of collapsing and this is the last thing they want, and they've seen what happened in Venezuela and the Trump deterrence, they will just not move right now. They will even try to ease the demonstrations inside Iran to stabilize the regime. Where do you stand on that?
I think the probability of a war between Iran and Israel is higher now than 2 weeks before.
Ah, really?
Yeah. I think the probability is higher, but not because of each one of the different actors want to preemptively strike. The problem is miscalculation. From the Iranian side, they know that Israel is very worried about the missile project. They've heard declaration from Israel leaders that they are worried of that. They know that the riots in the streets create vulnerability. And they are afraid that Israel will use this vulnerability in order to preemptively redestroy Iranian exceeding stockpiles of missiles. So they are on their toes. On a nightly basis, they are on their toes. That is why they are conducting those drills, training, in order to present their readiness, in order to improve their aerial defense system. On the Israeli side, we are afraid that they will try to shift attention from what's happening in the streets by preemptively striking Israel.
And that they are using military exercises to make us...
To get us used to that kind of...
Used to exercises until one is not an exercise, but it's actually a strike.
Yeah, so if that's the case, we should preemptively work against them. So each side is calculating the other side's interest in how to exploit the situation that can create a friction, that can end up with exchange of missiles or whatever. But going back to your question, I know that if and I think Iranians know, if they will suddenly strike Israel with a large barrage of missiles, Israel has very good aerial defense capabilities. It will create damage. It will be another surprise maybe, but the retaliation after a quick, very, very short time of recovery will be enormous, and most likely not just by Israel. In that scenario where you are suddenly being hit by Iran, in the current context when you have Trump in the White House, you can assume that Trump will join in. And this time around, because of the fact that it was not aggravated to strike, or there was no clear incentive, it's the only conclusions that Trump can reach, that it's the problem of the regime. And in that case, maybe the retaliation after the minor success that they will have will be probably not worth the risk taking in using this kind of shifting attention by striking Israel preemptively.
I have a very naive question. Isn't it easier if Prime Minister Netanyahu just goes to the microphone and says, we do not want a new war with Iran. And then if Iran says, we do not want a new war with Israel, and then there's no miscalculation?
Going to the microphone can be, in most cases, can be interpreted as just a decoy. Nobody believes declaration from the mic. But channeling or transferring messaging through a third party, that is the more credible way to calm things down and to cool the system. And I would not be surprised if that happens as we speak right now.
Okay. So shifting from Iran, but not really, going to the meeting between Prime Minister and Netanyahu and President Trump in Mar-a-Lago a few days ago, last week actually. They spoke about Iran on camera. Actually, everything almost we know about this meeting was before the meeting. And we almost know nothing about what happened behind these closed doors. But before the meeting, Donald Trump was asked about a new strike on Iran. And he made there an important distinction.
Yeah, very subtle distinction, but I think the Iranian got the message. He made the distinction between how will United States back Israel if they will rebuild their missile project. The answer was Yes. And will the United States help Israel if they will reconstruct their nuclear project? The answer of Trump was yes, immediately. So between yes and yes, immediately, there's a slight distinction, and it reflects the will of the president. It reflects what is really important for him. What is the red line? The red line is the nuclear project. Regarding the missile, we will back Israel, America, but it's not immediately. It's not guaranteed in advance. The presentation, I'm sure about that, that was interpreted in a very, very accurate manner in Iran.
And Donald Trump said that he got the intelligence assessment by Israel about the ballistic missiles program of Iran, but he didn't say, thank you, I take it seriously. He said, I will study it. I will give it to my agencies. Is this a common reaction, or is this something that we should worry about that is not right away taking in the Israeli intelligence assessment?
That's a common response usually, but not for Trump.
Okay.
If Trump would probably want to work on that, he would probably say, yes, I got it and I will work on that. Sending it to a circle of evaluation in his system means that this kind of emerging threat is not as important to President Trump as the potential of nuclear threat. He's focused on the nuclear project of Iran.
Okay, but it's not him saying, I don't fully trust Israel, right?
No,
it's not
no.
what he said.
No, it's evaluation. He's sending it to the system. He trusts Israel, but he's signaling that there's something that's more important from that.
Okay. Besides Iran, they talked about Syria and Turkey and Gaza, of course, and there was also another topic on the table that we didn't really speak about.
Yeah. It's very
we,
interesting.
meaning the Israeli media.
Yes, it's very interesting that when everything is transparent in the Trump administration. Before the meeting starts, they are saying we have 5 topics to discuss. What are the 5? Gaza is one, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. What is the 5th? The 5th is technology. Advanced cooperation in AI, quantum computing, and emerging technologies. And probably even nuclear energy, small reactors energy. Why is that the 5th topic? Because that is exactly what was promised or when MBS came to visit Trump. Israel cannot afford itself that there will be a different country in the Middle East that has priority in terms of quality, in terms of strategic state, strategic posture that is better than Israel. So in that term, I think that 5th topic of technology, energy, was probably something that Israel got in return for concessions maybe in Rafah crossing, maybe in Gaza, maybe in Lebanon. But I think we should not neglect that. It's probably for the long term of Israeli strategic posture in the Middle East, that's maybe more important than the other topics.
So just to be precise, it was a demand by Israel for the United States to invest in those domains inside of Israel?
Well, we don't know what really happened inside the meeting. We know what happened with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia bought planes in order and got investments in AI. Not just planes. Saudi Arabia bought lots of military acquisition and procurement, and in return, that is an investment. Saudi investment in the United States is by purchasing weapons from the United States, and in advance, the United States invested in AI and something along the statement of nuclear technology, whatever it means, nuclear technology. Okay, that was promised to Saudi Arabia. We can assume that the same happened in Israel. We will purchase a new squadron of F-15I, and probably maybe another squadron of F-35 jet planes, and maybe in return there will be some form of investment of the United States in AI in Israel, or some form of cooperation in emerging nuclear energy technology.
But then why would we have to assume that? I mean, the Saudis and Trump, MBS and Trump, they gave this big press conference where they talk numbers and billions, and they were very proud of the agreements that they achieved together. Why we didn't hear that on the record by the Israelis and the Americans, if so?
Yeah, very simple. Israel has no $1 trillion to spend in the United States. It's much more modest. So there was not something to flash about. It's something, I imagine the numbers are more modest, and for that case, it was kept in behind closed doors. But everybody else in the media in Israel and us are very interesting in the very crucial areas of discussion aside from that very important one. So the focus was on that.
Okay, and just to finish, Gaza. We were really expecting a big announcement around phase 2 in Gaza, and there were talks, but we don't see a huge step happening yet. Where are we?
Well, we should wait a while, okay? Netanyahu returned back on Friday. The cabinet meeting to discuss over what was achieved was conducted on Sunday, yesterday. Today, a special meeting is going to be taking place in Paris regarding the Syria agreement, and as for Gaza, it is mainly behind the scene because it's very, very sensitive in terms of Israel internal politics. And the fact that Ran Gvili didn't return, it's very volatile, it's very fragile for Prime Minister Netanyahu. So we should be waiting patient and to see how the next few days are evolving. And I think we will hear something regarding the Board of Peace establishment, the Executive Committee, the technocratic government of Gaza, and Rafah crossing. I think all four steps that are part of Stage B will be declared, not the reconstruction. I think the reconstruction of Gaza will be postponed and conditioned by the return of Ran Gvili.
Okay. Reserve Major General Tamir Hayman, thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that's it for this episode. This was Brief.IL by INSS, a new weekly dive into the events shaping Israel's national security. We warmly invite you to follow us on any podcast platform of your choice. You can also watch us on YouTube on the INSS channel. Thank you to the team, Ariel Nugrian, Shai Shachaf, Omer Vaxelbaum. Have a good one.